welcome. And we do have Commissioner Willie join us online. So over to you, Chair Harrington, as Susie turns this camera on. There he is.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the work session of Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. And good morning to you, Commissioner Willie. We don't see Commissioner Nafisa Fai.
She sent an email due to the JPAC. She asked to be excused for today.
Oh, okay. Great. I didn't get that email. I'm joined here. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, and I'm joined here in the room with Vice Chair Commissioner Pam Treese and Commissioner Jason Snyder. So we're going to kick it off with a great topic, update on the library funding and governance evaluation process. And Lisa, good morning. Could you start us off by introducing your colleagues who joined us here?
Sure, we've got folks from our library partners here today. I'll start with Courtney Gill in the gray sweater. She's our community relations manager here at WCCLS and has been doing an amazing amount of work for the Levy educational efforts. So thank you to Courtney. And then we've got Molly Carlisle and Chris Moore from West Slope Garden Home West Slope Community Library Association. And then we've got Terry Palmer and Jesse Castellanos from the Aloha Community Library Association. And then we have Colleen Winters, who's the director of the Forest Grove City Library.
Great. Thank you for joining us today in person. It's really nice to see you all.
And before Lisa begins, I just want to thank our partners for being present, and I know many are listening too.
Okay.
What the board may not see is the hours upon hours that staff are working at the staff level with our partner libraries. And so just huge thank you to the collaboration that we have in partnership with both the libraries and also at the executive director level and or city manager level. As a reminder, this is a cooperative, and so the structure that we have in place through this process really lifts up that cooperative perspective. And with that, I'll turn it back to Lisa.
Thank you. So our agenda for today, I have my usual sort of intro slides for this topic, which goes over the background of the cooperative library system and reviewing the process so far and the timeline. I'll kind of go a little more quickly through that because I think we're pretty familiar at this point. And then our touch points for today are a conversation about the fund balance target and any other information needs your board may have as we prepare to come back to you at the October 7th work session with hopefully a recommendation from our partners on a funding formula methodology. Okay, so public libraries in Washington County are operated through a partnership. As Tanya was saying, we're a cooperative between the county, 9 cities, and 3 nonprofit associations. All of those agencies independently operate their libraries, and then WCCLS provides funding as well as central support and infrastructure to link all of these independently operated libraries together into one system that everyone can use. In terms of our governance structure, your board is the governing board for our cooperative, and then the executive board is advisory to your board. The executive board is made up of the city managers or their designee for the city libraries, and then for the nonprofit libraries, it's the executive director or the president of their nonprofit association. Then we have a group called the policy group, and those are made up of the library directors from each of the libraries, and they are advisory to the executive board and to WCCLS. All right. So the collaborative process we've been going through with our partners have 2 main goals, which is to improve service consistency and access across the county, to support community needs by creating a library system with a fiscally sustainable future. Those are our 2 main goals. We have a whole bunch of process milestones and we are making progress. We are at, I've got the little orange, you are here icon there to show that we are at the point of establishing metrics to allocate funding for partners operating libraries. And so our hope is to return to you on October 7th with that deliverable. To get to this point, working backwards, we have established base service levels that would be available for all county residents and identified options to fund those. That work led up to the levy rate recommendation that your board supported, and that we've got that levy on the ballot. After we get through the funding portion of the work, our next step will be to look at governance and see what improvements we can look at and integrate into the upcoming IGA. Actually, one thing I should say just on that last slide, just for timing, our current IGAs expire June 2026. The current levy expires June 2026. And then if voters approve the new levy on November 4th, then that would take effect July 2026, and the new IGAs would take effect at the same time. Okay. Our process, the goal of our process is mutually agreeable solutions that we develop with our partners and with the facilitation and research and analysis of Marina and Company, which is the consulting firm that we've contracted with to do this work. We started with a whole lot of data analysis from Marina and Company. We also did a survey last summer, a community survey. We got an amazing amount of responses, over 18,000 responses in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And then we've done a lot of shared solution development with our partners. A lot of, as Tanya was saying, many hours of collaboration to get to this point. And we just got some photos from some of our work sessions up there. In terms of the decision-making process for this work, this was a slide that you've all seen probably many times before. This is what your board supported in terms of the roles of the different groups in our decision-making process. So your board is our governing board, so you are the ultimate decision makers. And then we've got the executive board is at the collaborate level, the policy group is at the involve level, and then we consult with our community members. This is also a familiar slide. This is our timeline. This is past, so I'm going to click past that. And we've got the little "we are here" marker for this slide. So we have gotten through all of the levy referral, and we're full into levy education at this point. We have our fund balance conversation today. Back in June, working back in time, we also brought to your board some questions that to help us give us guideposts basically for the funding conversations with partners. And then October 7th, we hope to come back with a funding formula and distribution methodology. And then we are, like I said before, well into governance and IGAs for the rest of the fiscal year. And as I said before, July 2026 is when all the new levies and IGAs begin. Touch points for today. We wanted to bring to your board some information that we've been sharing with our partners on the fund balance conversation. And so this is all information we shared with them and was included in your packet. And I'll just go over it here. So this is the context that our partners received on fund balance. So the current WCCLS IGA with our partners targets a 3-month fund balance, and that was something supported by our partners and your board at the time when we signed the IGA. County policy, as you know, targets a 4-month fund balance with exceptions allowed by the board. That's policy 405. And then the current board direction that we received on June 10th at that work session when we talked about guideposts for allocation, your board had felt comfortable with a 3-month target at that time.
If I may, just on fund balance, and just last week, your board had a roundtable where we had talked about upcoming roundtable subjects. One of those subjects in January is CFO Steyer and team will be presenting updated financial policies. So briefly, I want to just talk about the fund balance policy and reserve policy. In local governments, the purpose of that 4-month fund balance is because we do have property tax collection cycles. And so that allows the county to cash flow. The exception that Ms. Tattersall had spoke to is not explicit within the policy. So to my knowledge, WCCLS is the only program that is allowed to go below the fund balance target at this point in time. I have asked CFO Steyer to make sure when an updated policy comes back to your board that this be explicit within the policy. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, when going through an audit, we want to make sure that our financials match what our financial policy is. Number two, your board is well aware, and as a county, we are very proud of the fact that we have a AAA bond rating. Part of the bond rating reality is having strong financial management practices and policies in place. So if this is taken to go on an ongoing basis to go below the 4-month, I would just ask that we reflect that within a policy. I would also caution the board that it can be very easy to say, well, can't this department go down to 2 months? Can't this department? And all of a sudden, I will be honest, we can't operate the county and cash flow. So this is a very slippery slope by allowing one program to operate below the county policy. However, it is under your board's purview. We need to make sure that it is explicit in policy. I would ask that Ms. Tattersall speak to kind of cash flow and last year's reality of having a 3-month target and what that meant for cash flow.
Yeah.
As you do that, can you just quantify what 1 month, like each month of reserve ends up, or fund balance ends up being like in dollars?
Yes, I think we've got slides coming up that reflect that, that we added late last yesterday.
Okay. Thanks.
In terms of cash flow, WCCLS makes quarterly funding allocations to our partners in July, October, January, and April. And our levy revenue and our general fund transfer, this was looking at last year. We received the levy revenue in October, and then I think the general fund transfer came through, levy revenue came in November, and I think general fund transfer came in December. And so looking at our cash flow last year, WCCLS had a $1.7 million deficit in October due to those first 2 quarterly allocations going out before the tax revenue was received.
And how did we cover that?
If it's during the year, WCCLS in that case was operating at a deficit, and in essence, the county general funds was covering that deficit.
We don't
want it to be said.
Yeah, we don't have a separate bank account. Yep. Yep. Okay, and then these are new slides that we added in late yesterday or this morning. Thanks, Kevin. So these are slides that were from Marina and Company, and so they show the different 5-year forecasts for the various fund balance targets that our partners are discussing. The first thing I want to say before I kind of go through all of these slides, was that talk about the assumptions that are built into these projections. So the first assumption is that we have a stable general fund contributions, that the general fund contribution remains flat, basically the same as it is in this current fiscal year. So that was one assumption that was made in this forecast. The other assumption that was made was a 4.25% AV growth, which I think makes sense based when you look at it from a historical perspective, but looking ahead, that might feel pretty rosy. And we've been really clear with partners that this is a very optimistic forecast given the current environment. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, so I just want to underscore how we do projections. Finance looks backwards and what has the history told us, and that's where the 4.25 comes from. Just in a conversation that Ms. Tattersall and CFO Steyer and I had yesterday, we all agreed that we're a little cautious about that 4.25 assumption because that assumes that we have a 1.25 growth over the 3% base on an annual basis. So we are fortunate to have experienced that growth in Washington County. However, I would have a caution flag moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So this slide shows the the proposed allocations that partners received on July 31st with the 3-month fund balance target. And so you can see over the 5 years, at the very bottom there, you'll see how much the fund balance would represent in dollars with these assumptions, and then how many months of expenses that works out to. Next slide. And I do have a summary slide at the end that kind of condenses all of this. The city of Beaverton had sent letters. I do have copies of the letters here if that's helpful, requesting that we look at a 2-month fund balance projection to allocate additional dollars upfront to the partners. And so Marina and Company prepared basically 3 scenarios that basically free up 3 different amounts of money. So a more aggressive scenario would be freeing up 1.5 million from the fund balance, and that would leave us with 1.79 months of expenses at the end of the levy cycle. And then we have a little more. Oh, yes.
That's freeing up 1.5 annually. Is that correct?
One
Is
time.
that just one time in the
Just
beginning?
moves the money one, like,
This
Further
this
down
is
the
a
road.
one-
time.
It's a great question. I should have mentioned that
Yeah.
this would be a one-time distribution kind of upfront, and then that's out of
But
the
the-
fund balance.
But,
Yeah.
but
I'm actually-
the impact is.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner Treese. I'm going to expand on that for members of the public that may be watching. The use of one-time funds, such as in this case, fund balance or reserves, is one time. Once we use it, it is not there. So it would be a benefit to the partner libraries for one operating year, but then it is gone. And then, as you can see, even over the 5-year projections, we are still well below the county 4-month reserve policy.
Which means that the county would have to float
Correct.
a loan essentially to cover the WCCLS gap.
And on that float, like the question can come up, well, what's the problem? If
We
the
can't
county
cut
would-
paychecks, people.
well, part of that problem comes into part of your reserves is not just for cash flow. It is for that unexpected significant emergency that could happen. Let's say a natural disaster that we need to use those reserves. So I just, that's the other reason of caution.
I was just clarifying. Thank
Mhm.
you.
So I just very quickly, like these 3 scenarios don't even come close to the Beaverton ask, correct? I mean, 1.5 million, if I'm doing my math, each month of fund balance is about 4.2 million. Is that correct?
I'm going to trust your math at this point. Yes, I think so. And then so the latest, sorry, and
I mean, I just did on the prior slide, it shows 12.9 million divided by 3 months. So
yes,
each month would be around
or
4.2-ish. So this the point I guess I'm trying to clarify is that this 1.5 million number isn't even close to what Beaverton's asking. That's the most aggressive thing you've modeled. Is that correct?
that's correct. And that from Mayor Beatty's letter from August 29th, I'm just referencing that here. There's 2 sort of requests, and one is to allocate at least 1.5 million from the WCCLS fund balance to partners. And so that's why we've modeled the 1.5.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thanks for doing my mental math for me. Okay, 1.3 million is another scenario that Marina modeled for partners to consider. And you can see that leaves us with basically a 2-month fund balance by the end of the 5-year cycle. And then less or a more conservative, again, look would be freeing up 1 million, and then that would leaves us with 2.3 months at the end of the 5 years. This slide, oh, sorry, that text is a little small, but this slide is also new, added this morning. This was also in the memo that was shared with partners and attached to the work session item. This shows how much each partner would receive in the different scenarios. So the column on the far right is the proposed allocation from July 31st. That's the 3-month target. And then we've got what the allocations would be with those 3 different more intense scenarios for the fund balance. And then we've got at the very bottom of the slide, the average fund balance across the 5 years. And then the bottom line is the end fund balance at the end of 5 years. If that makes sense. And so
Absolutely.
yeah,
I was just may I ask Jason, where you got that? Because it's not on my,
The packet.
it's in the packet.
It's in
But
the packet.
It's in the memo.
It was line packet.
I went there and I'm not finding it. But
What
that's okay.
Oh, so I clicked on Lisa in the item agenda summary and then the presentation link from there.
Okay, thank you.
69 of 73.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your patience with the last minute updates.
Thank you for your work.
So I need a little bit of help on this one.
Mhm.
So this has the different allocation scenarios, including the proposed one that, okay. got
Correct.
it.
Yep. Yep.
All right, thank you. Just summarizes everything. Terrific.
Absolutely. Should I move to the next one, or do we need a little more time on this one here?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, Lisa, I'm looking at some numbers that we had, I don't know, a week ago or so, and it shows that the proposed revenues for just the first year, 26-27, was 51,620,000, and this has got 53,120,000. So
Yep.
it seems like the numbers are moving, and so what's the difference?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the number you saw, the 51.6 million, that if you look on the right column of this slide, that's the total revenue that would be, or the total allocation to WCCLS and the partners to deliver service in the proposal that was presented to partners July 31st, and that's with the 3-month fund balance target. And so the other totals that you'll see on this slide, we have 52.6, I'm reading right to left, 52.6, 52.9, and then 53.1. Those increase because of how much we're taking out of the fund balance for an initial one-time distribution. And that's what impacts that fund balance target, if that makes sense.
I see. You just added the 1.5 as you go right to left.
Yep, exactly.
The difference is you
Yep.
just added the 1.5 in for the reallocation. Because if I remember correctly, on another schedule I saw, we were not spending $1.5 million. So I think, is that where Mayor Beatty picked this number? I haven't figured out yet why 1.5 number was her number, other than it looked like we did not allocate 1.5 million in some of the projections, and that's a couple of projections back. Is that where she got it?
I think that, yeah, there was a request from Beaverton, and I can go back through the letters to look at a 2-month fund balance. And then in response to that, Marina prepared these 3 sort of varieties of a 2-month fund balance target that would free up 1.3, and 1.5 million. And that was shared with partners. And then I think then the mayor would have seen that and then had connected with the $1.5 million number.
Okay.
Is my remembering.
Thank you.
Yep.
So this specifically, when I'm looking at Beaverton, since that's partly where this request came from, I want to be thinking from their perspective. The difference between the 3-month allocation on the far right and the far left is about $200,000. The way this is presented, though, that's their annual allocation. That's not the 7.6 million is not that's not a life of the levy number.
That would be the first year allocation, assuming that revenues come in as expected.
Yeah. Sort of point out that specific point. And so what happens in year 2 with this change?
It will be dependent on revenue. And so should revenue, basically in the funding memo that was attached to the work session item, we explain the process. So should revenue come in with an increase, a net increase, so between the source, our two sources of revenue are the general fund and then the local option levy, and then whatever AV is applied on top of that. And so should the net of those two create an increase to WCCLS, then that increase would be applied, that percentage increase would be applied across all partner allocations and WCCLS's allocation. On the other hand, should net revenue between the general fund and the levy plus AV decrease, that net decrease would be applied to all partners and to WCCLS as well.
Yeah, I understand that point. I think that the issue I'm getting at and what's important is whether the 7.424 for Beaverton in year 2, I know there's growth, but let's eliminate growth for a moment, because that doesn't help illustrate this point. The 7.424 is really the base number the following year, because you're not getting the benefit of the one-time 1.5 million.
Right.
Okay, so I mean this is a really, to me, it's a really important point as we're making this decision, because we're talking about a pretty small, like overall, even for a large library. I mean, Beaverton's one of the largest in the system. From an allocation perspective, we're talking about a one-time $200,000 thing. So I just think that's
that was my point earlier. She also outlines that in the letter. She says that this is, the expectation would be $200,000. It is in the scheme of the large.
Very important context.
So it
Thank you.
gets closer to solving their one-time problem in FY 26-27, but doesn't solve any of their problems beyond that. Yep.
And I believe that was the gist of the request.
Yeah.
I'm pausing here because this is the last of my fund balance slides, and then I'm moving on to the request about governance. So I will do that. So this is also a new slide that was added this morning. So thank you again for your patience. So this was from Mayor Beatty's letter dated August 29th. I won't read it all out, but basically Mayor Beatty is asking your board to commit to establishing an elected official advisory body to inform the governance phase of this project. And so staff haven't drafted a response for your board's consideration to this letter. That is something we can do based on your board's direction today, if you wish. I also have the letters that were sent. There was 3 letters sent, July 21st, August 15th, and August 29th. I have those here. Thank you, Maida. If those are helpful. The one thing I wanted to point out is just, it feels like so long ago, but July of 2024, so just over a year ago, your board did approve a resolution and order to adopt the process that we are going through for our funding and governance evaluation process. And that described sort of the process we'd go through and the roles and responsibilities. And so I think if your board wishes to make us an adjustment to that process, I just wanted to raise that for your consideration, that there was this R&O from last summer. Okay. And then this is just a slide that shows all of the documents that were included with today's work session at your board's request. And if there's anything else your board might need ahead of the October 7th work session, I won't go through all of that list, but all of that is attached to the work session item. And then I'll flip over here to the policy questions. So does your board require any further information at the October 7th session? Does your board have any direction today on the fund balance target? And then is there anything your board wishes staff to draft in response to Mayor Beatty's letter?
Okay, I usually go last. Happy to do so. But I also know that we have 2 members online or here today in the work session who are also our board liaisons. And I don't know if you want Jason and I to go first or what.
I would defer to Jerry. It's harder when you're off
Oh,
camera.
yeah, okay. Jerry, you want to kick us off and get us going?
Well, yeah, I could, I guess, but I really am interested to hear what you and Jason have, because Pam and I've had a number of
I'll go
conversations
first.
about
How's
this. So
that?
I'll go second.
Or would you like
Perfect.
to go first?
All right.
Okay,
We're all being very polite.
so first on the reserve level, for me, entertaining the possibility of the 3 months was a compromise that I was willing to accept in order to also support the idea of lifting all boats so that no partner received less funding in this first year in the life of the levy than what they already had been receiving with the current levy. That meant that I was willing and I wanted to see how that would turn out. And so I appreciate the spreadsheet that pointed out the different 3.x levels. I can't go any lower than that. And it's a little uncomfortable for me now versus where we were previously because we have additional pressures on our general fund just for mandated services. Let me say it again. We have additional countywide pressures on our general fund. So why should our library support be held out as special? For me, I've been willing for this exception, so to speak, because of the work of the cooperative. And it is a risk for the county, but I've been willing for us to do so as a good partner in the cooperative. Now, on the request from Mayor Beatty to change the governance model, we've been on this journey for this levy for over 2 years, actually longer than that, because we wanted you to work with the partners on the RFP for the consultant. And that was a very collaborative process. So from my standpoint, entertaining the question of changing the model for how the cooperative works is a large question. And to me, I wonder, wait a minute, how does cooperative fit in here? We don't have to, as a county government, support libraries. It is not, it is an optional, county optional to discretionary thing. And we've invested a lot of time and energy into developing this levy. And at this late juncture, for one mayor to feel like that mayor hasn't been as involved as they would like, it's like, well, where have you been? I have great respect for our city managers and our library directors and the work that they've put into this. And are we solving a problem there within the partners and how those two bodies work, or are we solving a political problem and something that is within one particular city, perhaps? I think that it could be that the mayor of Beaverton has boxed herself in with the way that she has stated some things in this letter. The levy's been referred. There's been a big effort to explain it out to our public, and I'm just not interested in changing the whole nature of the cooperative at this late juncture in this levy cycle. If that's something that all of the partners, I mean, I feel like we've gotten a request from one partner to change the whole model. And it's like, why would I do that in a cooperative that's been working quite well to do some ambitious things? Because our funding challenges are getting more difficult with each month, not easier. So it's a pretty firm stance from me, and I may stand alone, but I'll find out. Jason, what do you think? Commissioner Snyder.
On the fund balance question, which I think is maybe the shorter, easier thing for me to cover to start. I think the first observation I'll make is that all of that is modeling. That depends on a whole bunch of, like, when I look at whether the ending fund balance is going to be 1.79 or even 3.0 months, like, both of those are projections that are requiring hundreds of assumptions to be made. And so I don't look at either one of those and think they're particularly precise. I do think that there's a policy question here about our financial health and our financial practices in demonstrating what are good and appropriate financial practices. We've already made somewhat of a exception from our typical financial practices, which I think is defensible. But it is hard for me in particular to support that particular component of this when the amount of money in 1 year to the library in question is essentially like 1.5 FTEs. Like it is hard for me to see how that really moves the needle in a long-term meaningful way, would be my observation on that. On the point around governance, and I've had conversations with a number of mayors actually about this. I know Mayor Beatty is the one who's put it in writing, but I do think one of the lessons we all could learn, and by we, I'm really kind of referring to the elected officials here in this process, is that the way that the work has been done over the last 18 months to 2 years has been much more with trying to work through the library directors and the city managers in the case of the cities, the city partners. And I think that's good and helpful. But at the end of the day, like where we're getting feedback and where the political support needs to come from is from the elected officials. I don't view this request as being about right now. Like, I think the question is a big one. I think the chair is right that the governance question is kind of a bigger, broader one. I don't take this as that it's about the levy cycle now. I think this is much more about looking forward into the future and longer term. And I think we could choose to go it as we have, and we'll probably have similar results in the future. And I'd rather learn from them in the longer term and try to improve and bring our elected partners along as well. And I think asking the city managers and the library directors to sort of either pull them along, drag them along, or just make sure they're on the journey and agreeing, like at the end of the day, I think we've seen it's not panned out in the way that we might have wanted it to. So that's my observation there. I don't think we make a change around that in relation to, now between now and November or even this year. I think we need to have a broader, bigger discussion about it.
I will add that Lisa and Marnie joined me in monthly chair mayors meetings on the library topic many, many times. So the mayors have had the opportunity to be on the journey from the county. And it's up to the mayors to choose to decide to attend that meeting or not. I know who's been absent. Jerry, what do you think?
Going to say,
Well-
does he have enough from us to make a comment?
Well, yeah, no, it was good to hear your perspective. And Jason, I agree with you. I never thought, I guess, this governance decision was going to be anywhere in the near future. I was thinking probably at the next levy cycle, so in next July at the earliest, and in that interim, that we could have conversations with the mayors. I haven't heard any concerns, quite frankly, or desires to change it, but I think the conversation should be had because it's been raised, so we can ask that question. And then if if the majority say leave it as it is, then that's the direction we would go. I guess I don't have any direct thoughts to one or the other. I will say that, and I've said this before, maybe in front of you guys, so I apologize, but when I was appointed to city council in '92, I was appointed as a counselor, counselor for the city of Hillsborough, to the WCCLS board, and Lou Ogden was the chair as mayor of mayor of Tualatin. So this isn't something new that we would be.
1992?
Yeah, hard to
Not
believe,
something new? That's like 30 years ago, sir.
huh? Yes, I know.
So guess what? It hasn't been that way for over 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
it's been a long time.
I don't even know when it transitioned away from that because I was only on the city council for 5 years and then stepped off. But
Lisa can answer that question for us.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna, so I don't know off the top of my head exactly. I think it was the early 2000s when the governance model changed. And yes, Commissioner Willie is right that there were electeds on the governance body back in the day, and but it was interesting because it was a mix. So each jurisdiction could send whoever they wanted to this governance group, and so some cities chose to send elected, some sent their library director, some sent someone from their advisory board. And so I think one of the challenges with that model was that folks came to the table with very different levels of perspective and authority to speak for their organization. And that was the reason that the change was made to have the executive group be city managers and then nonprofit executives. So I'm not
So either way,
weighing in
it's
either
been
way.
20 years.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yes.
well, and with that, the hot topic for probably, I don't know, the entire time I was on it, so the 5 years, was the allocation of money.
Mhm. Yep.
And so, it's a deja vu a little bit. We're certainly going a different direction from the standpoint of how it's done and the focus on it. But this is we've been through this before in different venues. So anyway, as far as the 1.5 million, Jason, I'm kind of with you on this. I don't know what $200,000 would actually do. I mean, if it was an annual 1.5, then I could say, okay, maybe there's definitely some benefit there. But a one-time allocation and $200,000 goes to Beaverton, about $200,000 goes to Hillsborough. Some of the other ones obviously get a little bump in their first year, but then what it means is the second year, their allocation would actually, the delta, the increase between first year and second year would actually decrease because there's less money. So, yeah, it seems to me like a little robbing Peter to pay Paul in that first year, and then the second year they don't get quite as much as we projected. And so, anyway, I just don't see what the real financial benefit to anybody is by allocating this out. And then we take the risk, we bear the risk as the county for a fund shortfall and having to backfill that for a period of time, hoping that the tax revenues come in at 4.25. So it's a little bit more of a risk on our part than I think just $1.5 million. So that's all I got.
I think it's my turn. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Jason and Chair. When I look at these issues, it's really complex, and I appreciate the work the staff has done, the work of the collective, the cooperative, and we're in a situation where we're facing scarcity issues. And I believe that that's the underlying piece that we need to remember. And from my perspective, when we are facing scarcity issues, the level of communication needs to increase. So on the level, and you can lead a horse to water and you can't make him drink and all those things. I understand that. But I do believe we have to focus on our responsibility in this role to provide all the communication we possibly can, from politicos to politicos, as well as from staff to their own elected officials. The other piece that's made this very difficult is that we've been looking at the changes to the allocation methodology combined with trying to run a levy. So that's a really difficult time to be facing.
You think those should have been decoupled?
Yes. And into the future, I would recommend that they be decoupled. Well, I'd like to hear your response. But
I don't have to worry about it.
the changes to this allocation methodology, you've worked hard to minimize the impact as we move forward. I know that. I'm thinking that if we were to have a do-over, I would talk about what potential needs each library has in relationship to moving to the new allocation process. When I look at the request from Mayor Beatty for $200,000 to preserve the bookmobile and story time, that's all in the letter. It's to Jason's point, it seems like such a small amount in relationship to the whole. I'm not suggesting that we just allocate $200,000 to Beaverton, but I think that we would have been better served by understanding more completely what the issues were to the impacted entities earlier. That doesn't mean we wouldn't continue with the methodology. It just means we'd have an awareness to be able to discuss it through. The other thing I think that we're leaning on in this model is trusting the fact that there's communication between the staff at the cities and the elected officials that is the same as we are communicating to the elected officials. And whenever you're in that type of situation, there's going to be a difference of opinion that's shared. So getting to the point here, I agree that I don't support a change to the level, the length of time for funding for our funding reserves. I agree that it's impactful to the rest of our operations if we take any further dip there, and I'm worried about that. As far as the governance model, I agree with Jerry that I don't think this is something that has to be done immediately, but I think that it's incumbent upon all of us as elected officials to talk with the people that we work with the most and determine what the best methodology is for providing that communication, because we haven't been effective to date. So
I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can, but I'm not.
Okay. And I'm saying when I've heard the feedback on the library issues, there has been gaps of communication. And I know you hold the mayor meetings, and
I know who's been absent.
And I appreciate that. And the question is, what is the follow-up in that absence, and how can we as commissioners support that type of communication to help all of us as we move forward? So those are my thoughts, basically, to keep the reserve fund the way it is, but also to continue to look at our structure and to focus on the level of communication, almost more so than the quote governance piece. It's really making sure that we're having that communication.
Meaningful two-way dialogue,
Yes, thank you.
bringing the elected officials along. It's not just the mayors.
Well, that's a good point. It's all of the city councils and everyone that's involved in this, as well as our nonprofits. But again,
Way too much time to be spending on libraries. From my standpoint, we don't do half as much of that on our public safety and justice stack, our health and human services stack, which are part of core county business. So obviously we have different viewpoints here, but like I said, I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
and I appreciate that. And I just contend that a cooperative is always going to take more care and feeding.
Y'all in the future will get to figure out how to do it better.
Can we have the presentation back up and the policy questions, please? So we've heard from all the commissioners on the fund balance. I do want to go to the last question, response to Mayor Beatty. Would you like staff to draft a letter for your consideration in light of this discussion? The mayor has sent 3 letters to the board, and there has not been a response in staff review of the letters. Part of, and I'll just say from our staff perspective, some of the concerns that the mayor had lifted up in the previous 2 letters were really kind of alongside of what the cooperative conversations at the staff level were having. So,
Which is why we chose to not respond. Yep.
I'm just lifting up why the last one versus the first 2.
I mean, I think it is appropriate to respond with what a collective discussion was.
I agree.
Okay, so staff can work on that and bring that back to your board's consideration next Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay.
And I guess if you're bringing these back up, you want us to cover each bullet explicitly. I don't need more information at this point. I don't think. I think it's been pretty robust.
I don't think any of us, of the 4 of us, have asked for more information. And I think we've all spoken on the second bullet to willingness to go with the 3-month as an exception to the 4-month financial policy, which is quite a compromise for us in order to reach that goal of keeping everyone whole. And I think that's very much worth recognition.
Jerry's hand is up.
Oh, yes, Jerry, thank you.
Yes. And yeah, I would agree. I target bullet 2 and 3. I'm in agreement with the conversation that we've had. And number 1, I haven't quite signed off personally on this one yet. I still have concerns about the methodology that we are using, and so I mean, I've got some big surprise. I've been playing with numbers on this, and so I've got some, I guess, more comments that I will make with Lisa and kind of walk through this. But I'm in agreement
So
with
that
both.
means we need to have an additional work session before October.
Well, I'm not sure. My brilliant ideas are going to be all that brilliant. So I'm not sure there'd be any changes to what we've seen so far, but I just want to have some more conversation.
That's a slightly different message. We have a proposal that the partners, and please, Ms. Angie, correct me if I'm wrong. We have a proposed methodology that has gone through the partners. And that's been documented here through all of the various pieces of the information today. And the partners are convening on September 25th. So if there's going to be any proposed change, that needs to be done so that we're aware of it. So repeating today's work session just on that question, on the distribution, and then so that our representation at that meeting on the 25th is clear.
I don't know that, Commissioner Willie, it sounds like you're still trying to get comfortable with what you have, and you may have questions and dialogue further to have with Lisa. That's more
Yeah,
what I'm reading through what you've just said. And
yeah,
then
it's a
update it.
Lisa conversation. You're right. It's a Lisa conversation at this point in time.
It went both,
Um,
it went
Yeah, it,
multiple ways as you were articulating it.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think we need to have another work session, and I mean, like I said, it's just my concerns. I'm not hearing any concerns from any of you, and like you've said, this has been vetted and will be approved on the September 25th. So, so we'll just go with what we have right now. But I need to reach out to Lisa, realizing that I've only got about 2 more days this month to do this. So I'll be doing that quickly.
well, and for point of clarification, I didn't just listen to what Lisa had to say as one of 5 or 4 for today. I went through all of this material. I spent time with my calculator. I thought about the document that's in here that we haven't gone over about how the tax revenue is collected and where it goes and who the beneficiaries are for getting more funding or less funding. It's item D, or the 4th item, the property tax contribution projections. I feel like I've spent an extraordinary amount of time to make sure I was prepared for the work session so we could meet our goal and keep moving towards the September 25th meeting and the October meeting. So I hope that I will continue to have confidence that Lisa will be able to, with finance, address any questions you have so we don't need to keep having more meetings on this.
I would agree with that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And
Thank you, team.
yeah, thank you for all coming too.
Okay, next we have board and leadership communication. We're a little bit behind time. Why don't we start with leadership communication?
Great. Good morning, Chair and Board. Thank you for this last conversation on libraries, and I can't remember who, maybe it was you, Chair, that had shared just concern on just funding county services in general. So I do want to give you an update from community corrections, and I will actually be sending this in email, so you have this for reference too. As you are aware, between budget reductions from county general fund and the failure of anticipated state funding, community corrections has reduced 18 FTE positions, closed the victim services division, terminated the intern program, reduced the center capacity by 48 beds, reduce peer support programs, and reduced housing funds. I know that's a lot when I say it in one sentence. The FTE positions were spread throughout every division and every level, from executive ranks to line ranks, in addition to a reduction in contracted services. These reductions have strained local resources, and community corrections is exploring areas where we can find operational relief. One of the areas being explored for potential local cost avoidance is with downward dispositional departures. The criminal
That mean?
Hold on one second, I'll get there. Yep. The Criminal Justice Commission helps subsidize some costs through the Justice Reinvestment Programs. And this is why I'm sending this to you in email too. However, the amount of money does not cover the actual cost for our local jurisdiction for all the downward dispositional departures we supervise. That means the departure, be patient with me, Chair. That means the departures from prison. That means the departures or those that the court demands, in essence, in our supervision. The strained resources in community corrections could have an impact on sentencing decisions made by the court. If a defendant qualifies for a specialty court, we continue to encourage those referrals. However, if the defendant does not qualify for a specialty court program and qualifies for state prison resources, we are encouraging the consideration of sending the defendant to prison instead of local supervision. I am actually going to repeat that sentence because this is another one hard to hear. If the defendant does not qualify for a specialty court program and qualifies for state prison resources, we are encouraging the consideration of sending the defendant to prison instead of local community supervision. We know this will have an impact on those defendants' inability to receive services. This is why it is crucial that we receive the state funding we need to help keep those defendants out of the state prison system.
I was also pondering, I don't mean to cut you off, but as you were describing it, that since the state doesn't give us enough funding they only give us funding to handle a certain level of downward dispositions, then great. Once we reach that in a fiscal year, we say, that's it, state, you don't fund anymore. We're not going to do it.
Community Corrections is actively supervising approximately 600 people who are in downward dispositional departures. So once again, from the state system in Washington County. We're very supportive of keeping people locally in the community and recognize the importance of local engagement for adults in supervision. However, given the budget circumstances and strain and local resources, Community Corrections is likely going to request the court revoke probation for violation behaviors at a higher rate than we've been able to in the past. The aforementioned strategies to engage more state prison resources for these populations will free up local resources to engage other adults and supervision. For example, when we utilize state prison resources instead of local community supervision, it frees up local jail space, reduces court dockets for probation violations, reduces pressure on already existing defense crisis, reduces workload for DDAs, presenting probation violations, and the list goes on because this is a true system. Director Gorian is having conversations with DOC, CJC, the DA's office, and the courts, and we'll keep your board updated on developments. As I said, I will email this to you all so you have this in writing, and if you would like, I could also include this as an attachment to the packet. And I will leave it there with my update because that was a long one.
Oh boy. New world. Normal. Hi, Alex.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. In the spirit of a new world, I'm going to revisit something we talked about briefly in previous meetings. So in 2023, a U.S. Supreme Court case, Tyler versus Hennepin County, established that it's unconstitutional for local governments to keep surplus funds from a tax foreclosure sale. In that case, it was a 94-year-old woman in Hennepin County, Minnesota. She had her condo sold for $40,000 by the county to cover a $15,000 tax property debt. State law at the time allowed the county to keep the $25,000 in surplus proceeds from the sale. The Supreme Court in Tyler unanimously ruled that keeping the surplus constituted a taking of private property without just compensation, violating the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. As your board may also remember, the Oregon legislature this year passed House Bill 2089, which changes a number of notice requirements for tax foreclosure complaints and is set to take effect at the end of this month. HB 2089 provides a process by which former owners of real property deeded to the county for delinquent property taxes may claim the surplus value after the property has been disposed of by the county. And of course, this was a direct result of the Supreme Court's decision in Tyler. The reason I mention all this is because that goes into effect at the end of this month, and this week Washington County will file its final 2025 tax foreclosure complaint under the legacy tax foreclosure system. As we move forward under the new system established by HB 2089, Mr. Jason Bush, Deputy County Counsel, is working in lockstep with our colleagues in A&T to ensure smooth implementation of the new system. Certainly, if you have any questions, we can address those with you at a later time. That's all I have for you.
It's really wonderful to have such expertise here at Washington County. Clean Water Services.
Good morning, Clean Water Services Board of Directors. Rick Shanley, our acting CEO, general manager, is out of the office on some well-deserved vacation this week, so you have me.
And it's next week too.
And next week as well. Just short announcement this week. Tomorrow night we have our Clean Water Services Advisory Commission meeting at our administrative building complex just down the street. CWAC will receive updates on a few topics that the board has already considered, including an occupied buildings update, which CWAC has not been briefed on before. A summary of our ongoing discussions around the plan to rebuild trust, and a closeout on the 2025 legislative session because we had a break over the summer. So Tracy Rainier, Government Relations Manager, will be both presenting on today before the board and also coming to CWAC tomorrow evening. So very busy schedule for her. I'm hopeful for a great conversation with the commission, and we'll follow up with anything else.
Great. Leadership update. Who would like to go first?
We're all looking at Jerry.
Okay, Jerry, you're up.
Keep this speaker up asking for a moment.
I think he's trying to unmute.
Yeah, my little iPad is what I'm using this on, and the little mute and unmute button doesn't pop up unless I touch about 43 different places on the screen, and then finally it pops up. So there. Yeah, last Tuesday, we, along with Lisa and her entourage, we went to the city of Hillsborough for the library levy briefing. Also, went to the East Precinct for another levy briefing for both public safety and the library, to the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District Advisory Committee. A very engaged group. I enjoyed that. They certainly pay a lot of attention to their public safety folks. And then on Thursday, I attended our roundtable, but had to depart a little early. I was not able to go to the LUT barbecue. So I'm hoping some of you went to that. And then on Friday, had the COPAC Executive Committee meeting. So still tonight, I have a Salmonberry Trail meeting at 6 o'clock. So I am moving venues this afternoon. So I will be someplace else, but I will be tied into that. And then kind of in and out for the next few days. Obviously, be back in Hillsborough on Monday. So that's all I got.
Great.
Let's see. Last Wednesday, I met with our federal lobbyists. I think everybody did while they were in town. That was a good and in some ways overwhelming meeting, I would say, in just updates and what is going on in Washington, D.C. Yes, Commissioner Willie, 3 of the commissioners attended the LUT barbecue and rodeo, and that was really, I think, a good, fun event. Friday, I met with a representative from Lamb Research at their request, and really they were just providing updates that I think have also been publicly available in the media about their continued work in our community and expansion locally, which benefits our Washington County community overall. Yesterday was a very busy day for me. I met with AMR in the morning. I filmed my State of the County segment. We had the Washington County Sheriff's Office swearing in and recognition ceremony, and then an acre meeting last night. Those all went well. Tonight, I will be at the Tigard City Council for a levy presentation. Thursday of this week, I've got a couple meetings and briefing on pod shelter topic. And then on Monday of next week, I've got a meeting with the Tigard Chamber CEO, one-on-one with Under Sheriff Cook, and then meeting the new Tigard City Manager, who I've sort of met in passing, but not actually had a meeting. So I look forward to getting to know him a little bit better. That's what I've been up to and what I'll be doing this week. Thank you.
So I second the great discussion with Van Scoyoc last week. That was really helpful to me. And it was anxiety reducing because I could share some of my anxieties. And so that was helpful for me as well.
It was a release.
Yes, it was. So I appreciated that. I appreciated the perspective as always. Yes, later that same evening, I attended the ERMDAC meeting where we had a levies briefing, and that was both on public safety and actually it was only on public safety for ERMDAC. And that was Jail Commander Dave Marzilli did a great job. But my experience has been in all of these levies presentations, the benefit of having an elected official there is great because you can provide the campaign information, some of the other perspectives, and answer questions, frankly, that staff shouldn't be answering. So it's been good. I did attend the LUT operations and maintenance barbecue. I had the best hot dog I've had in a while. That was really good. So thank you for that. I after that drove over to the Gold Family Farms for a levies briefing again with the Washington County Chamber Unincorporated Business Council. And that was also attended by Deputy Wheaton, who did the public safety, and Lisa and her and Courtney did the library piece. I really want to call out that I appreciate both Commissioner Snyder and Commissioner Willie's attention to these levy briefings because we've all had our plates really full, but we have been attending these, and I think that there's considerable value in the attention to our levies. So I did go to the swearing in yesterday. I had the opportunity to say a few words, which I appreciated. We did have our acre meeting last night. Barry Johnson Smith was elected as co-chair. He is replacing Lillian Tsai, and we did have a recognition moment for Lillian. She's been on acre since the beginning and served really well as co-chair, including an extension of her time at her own volition.
When we needed her.
When we really needed her. Thank you. Tomorrow I have the Work Systems Inc. Executive Committee meeting, and then that following will be my State of the County videos segment filming at the CAT. And on Thursday morning, I'll be joining the WA Government Relations and Transportation Joint Committee for a levies briefing with DA Barton will be presenting on the public safety levy, and following up, I believe Representative Susan McLean is going to be providing an update on the transportation bill and where that stands right at this moment. Later, I am headed over to the Washington County Haulers Association. And then on Saturday, I'm speaking at the Union Gospel Mission Women's Life Change Center grand opening. That's on 185th. It is not funded by SHS dollars, but I have had discussions with Molly Rogers about the support that they provide to our community and just asking for her advice in participating there. And she felt it's, one more piece to the puzzle, which is of value. So that's my report.
I have a question on Work Systems Inc. Given that the state budget has cut back on a lot of funding, as has the latest federal budget, how is my understanding is that WSI is primarily funded through revenues available through workforce development through grants from state and federal.
Oh, yeah.
So how are things going there?
That's what I'm going to get an update on at the executive committee meeting. This is our first.
Oh, that's
executive
TBD,
committee.
right? Okay.
And so I will report on that because that's critical to our workshed here in this region.
Yep. Great. Thank you. I misunderstood that.
I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, I know. Thanks. I wrote it down, but didn't write the timing down. So thank you. Okay. Brief update from me in the chair mayor's meeting yesterday, which had low attendance. We talked about a brand new topic, Next year will be the 250th anniversary of our nation's formation. And so there is an America 250 program, quite loose. And the state of Oregon has organized through action that the governor took last year in designating the Oregon Historical Society as the lead agency through a small, not a task force, I can't remember quite the name of it. So we went around the room, and Dave Perullo is doing some additional research for us. But we shared different community groups that may have outreach here in Washington County. The city of Hillsborough next year will be celebrating their 150th anniversary. So I have not yet heard back from my outreach to the Hillsborough Rotary. I've been willing to front the money or pay for, not just front it, but pay for a potential county entry into that July 4th parade, if that is something we would like to entertain and provide our employees the opportunity to celebrate. And once again, we had discussion about how there is a whole set of generations that weren't born or weren't old enough in the bicentennial in 1976 and likely won't live till our 300th celebration. And I also learned what a 250th is called. It's the U.S. semi-quintennial.
Semi-quintennial.
There you have it. You've all been, you're all experts now. Last week and this week, a bunch of internal meetings, have the monthly SHS TCPB, Tri-County Planning Body meeting, where we're updating and ratifying a bunch of plans. And then this weekend, I'll be taking a long weekend, Friday and Monday off to travel to Montana for a nephew's wedding. So short week for me. So, great. That's it for board and leadership communication. We're actually early now. But Ms. Tracy Rainey is here to take us through the next topic of the Scoggins Dam Seismic Modification Project Update. Welcome, Tracy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Put up here. Sure, got this in the right positioning. Good morning, Chair Harrington, members of the board. Again, for the record, Tracy Rainey, Government Relations Manager for Clean Water Services. I appreciate your time this morning to provide an update on Scoggins Dam, as there have been a number of pretty significant updates that have occurred over the last 6 months, particularly. Okay. So this morning, I'll be providing a brief overview of the Tualatin project, which is more commonly known as Scoggins Dam or Hag Lake. I will talk through the history of the Tualatin Joint Project, which was an effort to concurrently address needed seismic modifications to the dam while potentially providing for additional stored water. I'll talk about recent efforts to advance the dam safety-only project, which is the project to seismically retrofit the existing dam without providing for additional storage. Finally, I'll talk about recent updates on the project scope and how local project beneficiaries, including Clean Water Services, are responding. And we will then move to a board discussion and any questions that you have, though please ask questions throughout as well. Okay, so a little history on Scoggins Dam. This will probably be some repeat information for some of you. The project was initially authorized by Congress in 1966 via Public Law 89-596. The bill authorized the construction of the Tualatin project and appropriated $20.9 million for its construction. The bill outlined the principal features of the Tualatin project, which included a dam and reservoir, canals, pumping plants, and water distribution facilities. So the project as we know it today includes Scoggins Dam, Henry Hagg Lake, Patton Valley Pumping Station, Spring Hill Pumping Plant, booster pumping plants, and a pipe lateral distribution system for irrigated agriculture. The initial project purposes specifically included irrigation, municipal and industrial, flood control, recreation, and conservation of fish and wildlife resources. Water quality for the dilution of water for public health considerations was separately added as a project purpose in March of 1969, and that was through an action taken by the Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation at that time. So we weren't initially included in the bill, if you read the bill, but then there was a letter sent from that commissioner that added us in. That was the same year that the Oregon Environmental Quality Commission issued a building moratorium in Washington County due to pollution and public health issues that were occurring here at the time. The authorizing legislation also specified which costs for the construction were non-reimbursable and which were reimbursable. Non-reimbursable costs are those that are widespread and are therefore not assigned to a specific project beneficiary. They are ultimately absorbed by the federal government, where reimbursable costs are those that are assigned to a specific local project beneficiary, such as irrigation, municipal and industrial, and then water quality. We continue to refer to these local project beneficiaries as repayment partners for the project. I should also note that you'll see Lake Oswego Water Corporation on there. We don't talk about them as frequently as a repayment partner, but they do have a relatively small quantity of water that they are using for flow occasionally to Oswego Lake. Okay. The dam holds approximately 54,000 acre feet of water. So for context, a little bit of water nerd moment for me. An acre foot of water is the amount of water you would need to cover an acre of land with 1 foot of water. So that's what, when we talk about measurement of a quantity of stored water, that's what they use as acre foot. The water held behind the dam provides drinking water to over 400,000 individuals and businesses in the cities of Hillsborough, Forest Grove, and Beaverton. Drinking water has approximately 25% of the stored water, as you'll see on that slide. Approximately half of the water is used for irrigation for approximately 17,500 acres of agricultural land within the county. This water and the contracts for irrigation are managed by the Tualatin Valley Irrigation District. And then finally, approximately 12,500 acre feet of water is stored for water quality releases. That is the water that we use at Clean Water Services for our Clean Water Act permit compliance, including for thermal management. And I'll just note quickly, the use of that water has changed for us over time with the investments that have been made in advanced treatment at our 4 water resource recovery facilities. So really we are using that water at this point for flow augmentation, and really primarily that's around thermal management. Lake Oswego Water Corporation has less than 500 acre feet of water, so not a lot compared to the other users. And it should be noted that the facility also provides really important flood control benefits within our region, as well as economic benefits that result from the businesses that benefit from the stored water.
Did you say 500?
500, less than, it's 497.
That's
we'll round it
approximately. Up. That's great. Thank you.
Tracy, could I ask a question?
Yes.
The 53,600 acre feet, that's when when it's full.
Yes, that is when it's full. Okay, so I'm going to shift into some of the history of the Tualatin Joint Project. So when we say Tualatin Project, we're talking about just the authorized project itself. When we talk about the Tualatin Joint Project, we're talking about the efforts that were underway for kind of the past 20 plus years to look at potentially expanding storage for the facility, as well as addressing seismic needs for the facility. So the history of these discussions really do go back to the early 2000s. You could argue maybe even to the 1990s, and they ultimately ended in 2021 when Clean Water Services made the decision to forego additional storage, instead pursuing a dam safety only project. In the late 1990s, There are regional water supply feasibility and planning efforts that were underway within the region, and these efforts identified the need for additional stored water, or really I should say for additional water for the future. In 2001 through 2004, the region conducted a water feasibility study to look at various options for increasing water supply. These efforts focused in on the potential for increasing stored water behind Scoggins Dam, and they ultimately led to a draft environmental impact statement, which was released in 2009. So backing up 1 year prior to that 2009 draft EIS, the Bureau of Reclamation began evaluating the seismic risk of Scoggins Dam, specific to a Cascadia subduction zone event. And in 2012, they issued a corrective action study, which identified that Scoggins Dam was among the most seismically threatened dams in the Bureau of Reclamation's inventory. This shifted the project into the Safety of Dams program within the Bureau of Reclamation. As a result, local partners worked with our federal delegation to obtain congressional authorization in 2015 that would allow for a joint project between the local partners and the federal government to both expand water supply storage for the dam and address the seismic vulnerabilities. In 2020, there was a joint project feasibility work effort that was completed, and it identified 3 options, including a seismic-only option, a dam raise, and a downstream dam that would enlarge the overall footprint of Hag Lake. All 3 options were found to be technically feasible. It's important to also note that in 2014 to 2016, drinking water providers in the region began exploring other options for additional water supply, which ultimately led to the Willamette Water Supply Project. So they found a different source that was redundant for them and seismically resilient, and were no longer interested in expanding storage at the facility for their future water supply needs.
Before you move off the
Yes.
slide, are you done?
I am done with this
Okay.
one.
So what legislation memorializes that the board of directors' decision was to advance a seismic-only project?
There was no legislation, and I will jump a bit more into that seismic-only decision in 2021, which feels like...
So we need to make sure that there's clarity on how and when and who made these decisions. So there's a record and there's no sleight of hand. And I suggest that this board be fully apprised of the nature of that.
I mean, as it was done, I mean, if it wasn't a board of directors memorialized decision, I assume that means that it really was the executive of the organization making a decision around a capital project and changing the scope of a capital project. Would that be accurate, or did something else happen? I guess
Let's have staff investigate it and come back
Okay.
to us in the future with the information set.
Yes, I will be happy to do that. And again, there will be another slide that dives a little bit deeper into the factors that...
I'm not questioning the fact.
No, yeah, but I think
I'm well versed
the
in
decision.
the decision itself,
Yes.
certainly, yes. And we'll find the letter too, and kind of...
We're
You
living
recall
through
this
the
happening.
process of lack of documentation for
Yes. Yes, I will find that letter and get it as well as a follow-up. I do remember that I came on in July of 2021 at the very end after the session, and then this decision was made shortly after, and it was really interesting. I mean, and kind of sad timing, just because there are people that worked for decades on this.
And I know we had a presentation on it, but
Yes.
still, if it's
Certainly
said at
will
the
follow.
decision, we need to make sure
We have it.
yes.
Absolutely. Okay, well, actually, I said there would be another slide on this in the decision, and here we are. So again, in late 2021, that is when we indicated that we would be foregoing the expanded storage option to pursue the dam safety only project. Again, when I talk about the variety of factors that led into that decision, including obviously at the time there was cost considerations were a big piece of what we were taking a look at. In 2021, the most recent project estimates had been $750 million for the dam safety only project. Projects under the dam safety program have an 85% federal, 15% local cost share. So that's important to note. where when we look at expanded storage options, the project cost was estimated at the time. We were getting close to that $1 billion mark. Under expanded storage options, Clean Water Services would be responsible for any cost in excess of the dam safety only project. So anything that was above that line for dam safety was going to be the responsibility of Clean Water Services. In addition, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act passed in November of 2021, and that included additional funding for Reclamation's dam safety program. This provided an opportunity to accelerate the dam safety only project option. Also, Clean Water Services had conducted some additional work, some more intensive thermal modeling that showed that additional stored water alone would not be enough to achieve future thermal compliance, and that deploying strategies including reuse, shading, and optimizing operations would result in better compliance outcomes. Yes.
It's not stated here, but if I remember correctly, too, the level of support from the Bureau of Reclamation was never firm.
Commissioner Sheets, are you on the expanded storage option?
On the on the dam safety only piece, the 85% from the federal government. I mean, I remember that we were jockeying quite a bit to determine whether or not we could even get the federal support.
I would have to check back with maybe Ms. Mark Jockers are on that one in terms of, because when I, from the time that I've come on,
I just remember a lot of muddling with Mercury and others about this.
It has been constant, advocacy work with our federal delegation to continue to make sure that this project remained a priority for reclamation with a lot of competing needs. Certainly with that influx of additional funding that came through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021, I think that everyone in the region that had been working on this was expecting this would continue to be a pretty slow march to the potential construction of the project. And then things did speed up considerably at that time. And from that time on, I think Reclamation did seem pretty committed to advancing. Yeah, from at least 2021, I would say. Okay, so when we talk about, so from 2021 to this past year, Reclamation has been working to complete the final design of the dam safety only project. The proposed project, which is shown in the graphic on this slide, would have involved excavating and backfilling portions of the crest and existing dam embankment, construction of a downstream shear key, installing a downstream rock filter and drain, as well as a stability berm, raising the dam crest by approximately 7 feet, demolishing and reconstructing the existing spillway, and then also reconstructing the bridge and ancillary features and constructing a new 2-lane road across the dam.
To be clear,
yes,
based upon the work session sheet that you've provided, Reclamation does not want to move forward with this project, right? So we're going to spend this slide and another one on a project that's now shelved.
Yeah, so this gives an idea, yes, of what what I call the full meal deal would have been for the project and what they were looking at between 2021 and 2025 and what they were working on. And they were getting close to about 60% design on this larger project.
Significant.
That is significant, yeah. So there was good progress made. And, a couple of other pieces I think to note in that, in the prior 4 years. Once this project became a federal project, we were officially in the role of being a cooperating agency. We were no longer a joint project partner. It was a federal project only, and we were a stakeholder. And there was also a shift in public engagement. It's important to note. We did a lot of that work previously when it was a joint project to inform the public in and around the facility and throughout the region about the efforts underway and the progress. That role has now shifted officially to the Bureau of Reclamation as well. We've received a number of different cost updates throughout the years, the most recent being in 2024, where the full meal deal project was updated at $900 million. There'll be one more update that you'll see coming up in this slide where we did get over that $1 billion mark. There was also work being done in 2023 to 2024, and this is important to note, but to update what is known as the economic benefit and repayment analysis, and that is really the tool that Reclamation uses to determine how they're going to allocate with that 15% local cost share, how they're going to allocate it among the local project partners. So how much does irrigation pay? How much do we pay? How much does drinking water pay? There was a new economist that came on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that analysis, but they have a shelf life of 5 years. So knowing that this project was going into a construction timeframe, they needed to update that because it had been 5 years. It had been 2020 since their last analysis. Reclamation also issued a timeline. They were working on their environmental impact statement. Like I said, they were really gaining ground on their design. Project's construction was supposed to start in 2029, with estimated completion was going to be 2035. So really felt like we were heading in a great direction. So I'll take a moment just to step back to that economic repayment analysis. As I mentioned, the prior economic repayment analysis had been done in 2020. Again, it does a few things. It estimates also the total benefits of the project to the country. So justifying really the expense to the federal government and the benefits that it provides overall. And then again, determining how much each local partner would pay for that 15% local cost share. In 2020, at that time, the project cost estimate was around $770 million. So you'll see that these numbers that are listed here reflect that estimated project cost at the time. And you'll see in this, and this is a conversation I know that many of you are part of, the water quality water was valued as the most expensive water. So when we talk about how much Clean Water Services was going to be paying as that portion of 15%, we were at $53.6 million, which is a bit higher than the other partners, including drinking water, and then of course irrigation. Irrigation is a little unique, and I should mention that they're also given a ability to pay calculation. So the federal government will go through an economic evaluation to determine how much their water is valued at, but then how much their ability to pay for that water is. Anything that is in between that, above that kind of ability to pay number, would then be subsidized through Bureau of Reclamation and some of their funds that they get from power that's generated from different facilities and some other.
That doesn't mean we
evidence.
pay more necessarily. They
No,
sort of
that does
take
not.
more of the accountability for it.
Yes, correct. So for the new repayment analysis, as I mentioned, we started working with Reclamation in the fall of 2023 with the new economists coming out actually to Clean Water Services and visiting some of our other local partners at the time. Our goal was really to separate out the fish and wildlife benefits from the water quality benefits. In the prior analysis, they were all lumped together. It said under the water quality section that they assume, you'll see it quoted on there, they assume that all the quantifiable economic benefits associated with fish and wildlife were captured in the water quality analysis, and as well as some of the recreation. And so we wanted to make sure that when we're talking to Reclamation, that they understand what it is that we do as a utility, what our obligations are for meeting water quality standards that are really driven by our Clean Water Act permit. And that was a piece that appeared to be missing within the prior analysis. It's as though they were assigning kind of widespread, broader water quality benefits and assuming, I think it's safe to say, assuming that stored water was the only mechanism that we were using to meet water quality standards. So not accounting for our advanced treatment, riparian shading, other things. So a lot of work, a lot of conversations just to make sure they understood kind of how we operate as a utility.
I'm sorry, Tracy, I'm having a mind block.
Yeah.
I understand that CWS had a goal to separate fish and wildlife benefits from water quality benefits. But then the last bullet, CWS proposed an option to capture the value of the benefit of the flow augmentation for fish. Do you mean separately from water quality? Okay,
Yes,
that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, you read that.
Okay.
You're spot on. Okay, so we had not really heard much from the Bureau of Reclamation, I would say, between the fall of 2024 to leading into a meeting that they called in March of 2025. So we really weren't expecting to see a new draft economic repayment analysis, but surprise, surprise, we did. And that shifted pretty considerably, how they were valuing water quality water. They did not really grab onto, I think, our kind of some of our suggestions about how they could separate a fish benefit, how they could do that from the water quality benefit. They really just said, we believe that your water largely reflects the value of drinking water, and didn't provide a ton of explanation as to kind of how they got there. But what it did is it created some shifts. So you'll see in that chart there, with the blue, there's the numbers that were from 2020, so showing TVID with that 27 million. They increased to 44 million. We'll talk a little bit about that because it's also important to note that the new project cost estimates were above $1 billion. So when you look at these numbers, you're going to see increases that are reflecting both project cost increase as well as that shifting in the allocation that occurred from their new analysis.
Both of those are moving in that table at the same time.
They are. And so that is why I included that green
The
chart
green one?
there. And that is what would have happened had it just been based on project cost estimate, but the approach of how they value the water and how they allocate, that would reflect.
So we
what that would
went
look like.
from being 47.7% to 35%. Okay.
Yeah. So
And is this happened in 25? Is this a reflection of administrative changes, federal administration? Is it unrelated? I'm just curious if there's a backdrop here.
Elizabeth, I can tell you have something to say there because you've watched this all.
Yeah, so this process started before, and it sort of spanned that administrative shift.
Okay.
Maybe something about the sort of fast rollout could have been influenced by that, but we'll see. Kind of the next step in this saga feels much more influenced by the change in administration. This, I think, was still driven by reclamation staff trying to go through the process that is dictated by their rules and regulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say that we are, we believe, the only water quality purpose in terms of projects that Bureau of Reclamation has. They have, I think, over 400 different dams that they manage for. So they really don't. They've really struggled, I think, to try and understand how to
Like their
capture value.
economist doesn't really. This is not something they're doing regularly.
No, it is not.
We're
Not.
confounding for them.
Okay.
And
Well,
it was.
We also have a watershed-based permit too. We're the only one in the nation.
We're unique in that sense. And, again, I think that, in some of the conversations, Elizabeth and I traveled over to Boise at one point to have a discussion. It became really clear that when they say water quality, they were talking about something different. When we say water quality, we are talking about something that's really driven by our Clean Water Act permit. And Clean Water Act permits and PDS permits is not really what Reclamation's familiar with. So just a lot of education and back and forth to get them to understand what our role is in terms of water quality.
Now, I want to note that this slide says draft. At what stage are we trying to get to the same stage that 2020 was, where it's not draft? It's either adopted or whatever the formal language is.
Great. That's a great question, Chair Harrington. I will say that now we've had some more recent updates to this project, as you're aware, that we'll talk about. And so when they did show us these slides, Reclamation, I think even at the time said, don't share these slides. These are not yet for public consumption. We're just letting you know. We never got
September. So where are we at?
We never got a timeline, and so at this point, we don't have a clear understanding. It would need to be obviously deemed to be finalized prior to any start of construction for a project. And so, and I will be very candid, our drinking water partners were not thrilled about this shift either. And it's a really tough one, right? It's, you know, it's kind of a, Mark Jockers always said it's a balloon, you know, and if you squeeze one side of that balloon, it's going to expand out on the other side. So it's a really difficult one to navigate. So we'll get back to you if we do get some better understanding from Reclamation about how and when they may finalize these numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So big update that occurred in May of 2025. Both federal delegation offices and local partners were contacted in May and asked to have a meeting pretty promptly with Bureau of Reclamation. At the meeting that we had, which was mid-May, Reclamation indicated that they had determined the need to pause further work on the dam safety only project as we know it. What they talked about in that meeting was that they were needing to compare the economic analysis of non-structural alternatives. And a non-structural alternative for this project, which has been something that's been around and kind of come up in the past, I would say, decade or maybe more, is a reservoir restriction. So reducing the seismic risk by reducing the amount of water stored behind the dam. And there is a value that can be assigned to that option, that non-structural option. I believe it's about $360 million. I have that somewhere here, $362 million. So as Bureau of Reclamation is required to have their conversations with Office of Management and Budget to justify the expenditures associated with this project, there's that pressure that exists, which is, please explain to us why there's a value to this project particularly as opposed to going with a reservoir restriction. I think it's safe to say that in this past year, there's more pressure there. And therefore, I think a bit more of a realistic threat that there could be a desire to explore and advance a reservoir restriction.
So aside from just saying reservoir restriction, how much of a restriction are we talking about? 50%?
For clean water services, I have that number, would be half of our quantity of water.
So 50% reduction for CWS. How about for the other partners?
I can pull that up, or if Elizabeth, you have the numbers.
But it's not the same percentage wise.
It is not the same percentage wise.
Because of the allocation.
Yeah, it is not. My understanding is it's not the same percentage wise, but I can't get those numbers to you.
So is that 362 million their cost analysis, or does it also include the additional cost that we would have because we have to pursue other approaches for the stream augmentation and water quality?
It intends to capture some of the lost benefits. I do not believe, and this is a conversation that we've had, if for some reason we did feel like there was traction for a reservoir restriction, I don't believe that they have done an adequate job of capturing lost benefits associated with that. I think that we would push really hard, both on that piece of it, in terms of lost recreational as well. I mean, there's a number of lost benefits that should be captured, and I think they're undervalued. And then also the fact that we would have warmer water, arguably, and our staff is taking a look at that. If you have less stored water in the facility, that water's going to heat up. And so I think we would push very hard that could cause impacts to fish and that they would need to take a look at that as well.
So you say here Reclamation will pursue new structural alternatives. So they've made the decision, they're going this way.
They will. So new structural alternative is what they presented to us in that May meeting as an alternative to reservoir restriction. And that is focusing on the most seismically vulnerable aspects of the dam, which are the spillway and to some degree the adjacent embankment. So that is where they will focus their energy, is in reconstructing that spillway. And so that's been a big conversation with the partners. We've had a lot of discussions with our project partners, a lot of open conversations. There's shared concern over the cost estimates for the prior dam safety project. Obviously $1.03 billion. estimated as of this past year, likely to increase by the time construction was going to start in 2029. We're very aware of that, especially then again with that 15% cost share. We are all very much in agreement that we are strongly opposed to a reservoir restriction option. And I think that feeling that there is that potential threat, we want to make sure that this facility is seismically resilient in any way. If that's a phased approach, if that is getting what we can now, a reservoir restriction would still be a significant investment of federal resource and really hard to undo. And so if we can get some construction going that does reduce that seismic vulnerability, generally the partners have indicated that they are supportive of that. I think the conversations that still need to happen at this point with reclamation is really them demonstrating to us that any new structural alternatives, kind of this scaled back approach, would be designed to adequately mitigate for a Cascadia subduction zone event. And that's the conversation too that we've had with our federal delegation offices.
A question or a statement?
That is, that is
right there with you.
Yeah.
That is an area that we have not had adequate conversations with reclamation, right? I know that that is what they're looking to design to. I will say this meeting that they had with us in May was not a very lengthy meeting, and we have not had much follow-up since that time. This is where our relationship and the support from our federal delegation becomes really important so that they can take over in applying that pressure and asking those questions and saying, show us how we can be assured as a region that this will accomplish what it needs to in the case of a Cascadia subduction zone and protecting public safety. And the other piece in that, again, is reclamation. We are encouraging them, and I know the delegation is as well, to engage with the public to update them on this new direction. There has not been a public meeting to date to inform them of this kind of new scaled back option. So, and I know those will be questions that will come up from the public. So we are in a position where we do need additional information still from reclamation.
Are we at a point where I
Yes,
can answer
yes,
that question?
absolutely.
In the past, I remember that there were competing projects. And is that part of what we're facing here with the scale back?
Like that are not in our region.
Yes, not in our
Yeah.
region, across the country.
That big one.
BFCISC in
Yeah.
California.
That's under construction.
Yeah.
We were
So,
number 2.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I just didn't, I'm surprised that we're looking at a scale back when we've gone through this whole process for so long.
Yeah, I will also say that
Are there others behind us that are pressing?
Bureau, yeah, I don't think we've lost grounds in our position in terms of being next and being a significant priority for reclamation. Again, I think that the pressure of that reservoir restriction piece, I think, became more realistic. I think with the federal administration that we are seeing right now, I can see where there would be more of a potential that could be seriously considered for our region, which would be obviously very detrimental. And so I think at this point, reclamation is hoping. They've done a lot of design work. So they were working on the spillway previously. They were working on this embankment. So they believe they can make up some lost ground in terms of that design work. We need, ideally, that number needs to come in below $360 million, I think, in order to fully eliminate that risk that a reservoir restriction becomes desirable by the federal government. I will also mention that Bureau of Reclamation has lost a significant amount of staff, including senior staff that had been working on this project, and we're very familiar and we're really committed and great partners with us. And we do still have a number of the staff that have been really, the project manager that we work most closely with is still there, but they are
still disruptive.
They are disrupted.
Is that attrition or cuts?
Both.
And in May, remember, this was the height of Doge also.
Can you speak louder?
So sorry. In May, this was the height of Doge as well, when you have a lot of pressure going on the opposite budget,
Yeah.
right? Right? Remember that?
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Don't forget that period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that factors in.
So that there were cuts.
I remember May, but I totally forgotten about Doge.
Yeah.
It's been a long year. So yes, that a lot to again, a lot of updates. So the questions for the board: what additional information would be useful to understand the project history and current project status? We've got a few of those items. Are there any other items that would be helpful for you all to just feel like you are as updated as possible?
So for the record, because I didn't state it before we started the CWS topic, you have 4 members of the Board of Directors here: Catherine Harrington, Vice Chair Pam Treese, Jason Snyder, and online we have Board Director Willie. So Jerry, would you like to go first?
I really don't have any. This was great information. It was a nice refresh. It's interesting to me. It sounds to me like the Bureau of Reclamation is trying to minimize their risk, and so they're saying if there's less water, there must be less risk, and which makes no sense whatsoever. But no, this is a very good presentation. I appreciate it. I don't have any questions.
One thing on the seismic side, when you have an earthquake, the water inside the lake begins to slosh. And so that's part of the physics of why the reservoir restriction is
Why it works.
one of the adaptations, because you have less water sloshing against the embankment of the dam. But that's, I mean, that's now the extent of my faux engineering degree.
I don't know that I need specifically more different information. I mean, it feels like we're working with a federal partner now that's sort of less organized and less resourced than it was, and is looking to spend less money and look at alternatives that may have devastating financial or economic impacts for our region, because overall it somehow, in some economist model, makes financial sense to do that. That's concerning to me. I don't think there's anything all of you can do about that, but keeping us up to date as things are evolving, I would appreciate. Like, I'd like to know, even if it's just a couple of sentences about what the latest is happening. I would appreciate just kind of being able to track with that. And then I also am getting from this, like, we need to maybe approach or reapproach our federal delegation again, differently, consistently. I don't know what the implication is there, but you spoke multiple times about keeping the heat on them or reminding them. So those are the things that, as far as additional information, I would comment on.
Yeah, and if I may, I will say Bureau of Reclamation has continued to be, I think, a good partner in wanting to see this project complete. I think for a lot of their staff too, they were putting a lot of work into this. I think the pressure,
career staff want this done.
Yeah, I think the pressure is really in the Office of Management and Budget, so OMB, you know, which is the office that's going to do that review to see if the federal investment is justifiable in their mind or of adequate value. So I will say again, I think Bureau of Reclamation is scrambling, trying to find us a structural option. And so we do appreciate that commitment. And I believe their understanding that a reservoir restriction does not work for this region. With the federal delegation, I will say one thing that has been really valuable in recent years, once we were no longer pursuing the joint project, the federal delegation really stepped in and asked for quarterly meetings with Bureau of Reclamation so that they could get updates from them and could do a lot of that pushing again where the public wasn't hearing as much information. and put that pressure on the Bureau of Reclamation. So they've been incredibly active and engaged with, again, meeting quarterly. There were a lot of phone calls in May. I know that Senator Merkley is working on some budget report language. Again, just applying that consistent pressure that this is a critical project for the region, and they've been really fantastic.
On the second bullet, I guess, so I'm clear, like the position is that the position of Clean Water Services, as I'm gathering from this, is that the restriction doesn't work and that we need something that seismically decreases seismic risk significantly. So am I summarizing
I
that?
think that's a great summary of it, and certainly would like any input from the board on that. But again, I think what we sense is that reservoir restriction is a real, it's a threat. Now that we know reclamation is going in a direction towards a structural option, we're hopeful that it's not as much of a threat at this point, but we're still very aware it exists. So that is as kind of the current thinking that we're using, and our staff is doing work so that we again are fully prepared with as much data as we can have to demonstrate the impact for Clean Water Services should there be some more momentum around a reservoir restriction.
Thank you.
I agree from the standpoint of even if it's in Rick's weekly roundup, just if there's something that happens, something that changes, a notification to that would be sufficient for me. I've some concerns about what we've learned at the county in relationship to potential barriers with the federal government. If our eyes are wide open about those negative opportunities, I'd say, keeping our eyes open and aware of that, I just anticipate that we could have some problems there. And then the other question I have is, we've done an annual Washington fly-in with CWS. Is that on the horizon as well? And I assume this is right at the very top of that list.
Yes, that Commissioner Teresa is something that Elizabeth and I have talked about and have talked with the partners. May could be April, May, I think timeframe for the Water Week may be a good time. We're still needing a bit, I think, of additional clarification to see where we think things are shaking out. But yeah, absolutely. I think once we have a clear picture that we think we're heading in a structural path forward, it'll
be time to push.
It'll be time to push.
Okay, thank you.
So I think I stand alone in understanding where we're at. Your second bullet, to ensure that the board is able to speak to Clean Water Services' current position. I've seen a lot of activity presented here.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you what our position is.
That's kind of why I had to articulate what I thought it was, because I would agree with that.
We need to be engaged to develop a position. And strategic approach for the modified project option. I haven't seen anything that suggests a strategic approach. So I'm really at a loss. I think those things are needed. Absolutely. Very supportive of that. And I know that you two and others on the team have the ability to produce a lot of more good work. And I meant to articulate for the record, we do not have any CWS legal presence in the room. So, which is unlike how we operate as a board of directors. I think we need to, I'll get pretty crisp here. We need to establish a CWS position. The agency needs to bring more strength to the table. You've gone from explaining very clearly the history of the project, the level of engagement and collaboration, then it switched to a federalized project, the updated economic studies. The feds, the Bureau decided to go with this reservoir restriction. That doesn't work for us for a bunch of reasons, but I haven't seen anything that presents data that says, okay, you reduce the level, that cuts our water in half. That means it puts the following industrial customers at risk. You know, there's math to be done there.
Yes.
But I haven't seen it, nor have I seen a plan for CWS staff to come up with that. So it's very much a mystery to me between where the position we would like to be in next April and May versus where we are in getting this update in early September. And, you know, I clearly understand there was conversation and internalization of information in May. I know that I received it in a weekly one-on-one around that time frame. So I had a level of awareness that conversations and shifts were happening. And this update has been presented very clearly, very clearly. But what's missing is from this update of activity and status, where do we stand for a formal position and how do we put our weight behind that?
Or like, what's the staff recommendation of that?
Yeah. What is the plan to get the level of information that is needed to tell the story about why we oppose the reservoir restriction option and why we need to give them the information that shows that we do need the full water capacity that we have for the economic benefit, not just of Washington County, but for the state. If our Silicon Forest cannot produce the products that they do, we're talking Lam Research, we're talking Analog Devices, we're talking Intel Corporation, and all kinds of other employers, just to name a few, then there's going to be a problem. So that needs to be done. In addition, we need to engage with those our community partners, our industrial customers, to help them tell the story, or with us at least, as well as our community population. Because it's all fine and good if people can get their drinking water, but if they can't flush their toilets, they're going to be a little upset about that. So I'm really pleased with the update today. I better understand the situation, but I need more.
Your comment about industry at the end of that, I think, is really interesting. And when we think about future fly-in whatever, like we should probably be, once all that's figured out and we're actually doing some sort of direct, you know, efforts and advocacy in Washington, D.C., we should probably have industry with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I, you know, and maybe
we have time.
Okay.
We have time to plan this.
Yes, we do.
September 9th, okay? But we need to have our act together to make that trip in April, and we need to have the opportunity to engage with our, not just our federal delegation, but that engagement for the industry partners and for our drinking water partners that rely upon our ability to handle their wasted water.
They can't produce
so
the water to be wasted. Yeah, we can't.
I would say
Or
probably
irrigation
by
partners.
November roundtable, we need you to put together an action plan,
That
a
sounds
time, you know, a response plan for all that work to be done and to go through the board before that April, May trip, at the same time that we're in the throes of budget in May. So just keep that in mind.
absolutely. I think, and we'll also, I think, brainstorm maybe some ways that we can have some broader joint conversations too with the partners, with You know, we do have a lot of check-ins with our drinking water partners and with Twin Valley Irrigation District, but
We
maybe
need
a
to
bit
up
more
it.
of a formalized,
It's not just at a staff level.
strategic.
The
Yes,
mayors have to be engaged on this,
absolutely.
okay? Because they believe that they have the pulse of economic development in their areas. And also, I want to hear what Van Scoyoc has to say about this plan
Yeah.
so that we are able to have them on board as our lobbyist in this domain.
As well as the farm, the whole agricultural piece as well.
That sounds great. We will start working on the.
I need to ask. So I was in a different place than what I heard most of you say. So are you okay with this direction, the summary of needs that I've
Yes.
outlined here?
Yes.
Jerry? Okay, thumbs up from him.
Great.
Terrific.
I look forward to follow up with you all, and thank you. Appreciate your time and walking through.
And thank you for sorting through all the complexity of this.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we need a break before we go into executive session. Is everybody okay with a short break?
Sure.
Yes. You want 5 minutes or 10?
10.
Okay. So we'll start at, we have time for a 15-minute break. I'm sorry.
Would you like a motion to move into?
Yeah, but first, Jerry, you okay with 10 minutes?
Please.
Well, I got to jump off this anyway. I'm not allowed to be on
Oh,
executive
that's
session
right.
on Zoom.
I forgot.
So can
10
I have more
minutes?
than 15 minutes?
You're excused.
Have as much as you
Very much. Okay, so before we take our 10-minute break, are you okay with 10 minutes, Steph? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn to executive session for clean water services? Didn't mean to say sewers system. Clean water services executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub F for the purposes of discussing exempt records.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 3-0. We'll be back here at 11:22.